Jonathan K. Yeah, one or two more. Jonathan K's got two. We'll do both Jonathan K's, and that'll be it for the night. Jonathan K says, we all know that the goal is full confiscation of guns in America, turn them all in their own words. We also know that's a physical impossibility by the sheer size of the existing base. Which of these two proverbial titans do you see winning out in the end, I guess? Is it going to be the irresistible force or the immovable object? I'm really glad you brought that analogy up, and I'm glad you brought up the argument too. Anybody who's ever had to deal with this presumable paradox, somebody just made it so clear for me. Once they made it this clear for me, I just realized, oh, how can I apply this brilliant insight into other things? Basically, we've all heard it before. Which is more powerful, the irresistible force or the immovable object? And in your mind, you start playing around with this. If there was a rock as big as the universe, but you had all of the energy in the universe, could you move the rock? And you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you start wondering about this and start wondering about that. And the second you start having this thought, you lose. And the reason you lose is because the question itself is impossible. The question's not just loaded, the question's impossible. You have to walk away from the question, because if there is an irresistible force, then by definition there's no immovable object. And if there is an immovable object, then by definition there is no irresistible force. These things counter-define each other, and you can't have them both at the same time. So that's the argument. Somebody says, which would win, the irresistible force or the immovable object? Then I would say, well, which one is it? Because they're not equal. You either have an irresistible force or you have an immovable object. Which one is it? Because it can't be both. These two things can never fight each other, because the presence of one locks out the presence of the other one. And on the same attitude here, I think I found myself in the gun argument when I started saying, I would start to prepare an argument, something to the effect of, okay, well, let's just say that you could ban all the guns. And this is actually a rhetorical trick I like to use, and I'll probably use it live someday. Okay, let's just say that we could ban all the... You know what? Let's just not say that. Because this is like saying, if we could all just fly through the air, we could escape the gunfire. If we all had wings, we could simply fly above the violence. Maybe that's the answer to gun control. It's pointless to start down a path that is already locked out. We should confiscate all the guns. And if we get rid of all the guns and throw them all into a volcano, there won't be any murder anymore. First of all, people be murdered with knives, but let's not be disingenuous about it. It's much easier to kill people with a gun than a knife, especially if you want to kill a lot of them. You can't just pretend that's not true. It's obviously true. But the other thing that you cannot pretend isn't true is that there are 300 million guns in this country or something like that. And the only people who will turn them in are the honest people. And I'm facing this now. I have until June of 2018 to decide whether or not I want to maintain my current AR-15, which I bought completely legally, bought 100% legally. It was a fully legal gun in California when I bought it. And now I have to decide whether or not I want to go featureless with this thing and get one of these butt-ugly, rifle butts, and because the pistol grip is one of the things that are banned, so they simply say, okay, this gun doesn't have a pistol grip. Fine. I like the pistol grip. I think the pistol grip looks cool. It's much easier to shoot that way. So the question is, what am I going to do? Am I going to change the stock on my gun? Or am I going to have to register myself as somebody with an assault rifle in California? And what's interesting about that, which was pointed out to me by somebody, which essentially has made my decision for me basically, but here's what it is. If I were to go to the shooting range and I was a registered owner of an assault rifle, in other words, a perfectly legal AR-15 that I bought in California in 2009 or 10 or something, then I would have to make a choice. Which one of these things do I want? And when somebody explained to me, they basically said, Bill, in order to have an assault rifle, in other words, if you don't change the weapon you bought legally, then you are not allowed to go anywhere with this thing in your car except to the range and back, and that is point A to point B, which means that, Bill, if you come up to the shooting range, this guy at the range told me this, if you come up to the shooting range and shoot your AR-15 for a couple hours and you decide to stop at a Wendy's on the way home, you have violated the law. You're now a felon because you didn't go from point A to point B. You did not go from your home to the range. You decided to stop, get a hamburger on the way back. And so now you're a felon. The actual felons, they don't give a damn about this. It makes them very happy. The one thing they want is to make sure that the honest people aren't armed, because this is why I put that Iceman, the murderer. That's why I put him in the last firewall. I wanted people to see this guy. I wanted them to look in his eyes and hear him say, I just want to kill as many people as possible, and I want them to remember me for eternity. I want my face to be the last thing they see. This guy's not deterred by pistol grips. And as I said, the idea that Apple's changing the emoji from a revolver to a water pistol doesn't seem to have much effect on him. So, what do you say? There is no way that they will ever be able to get the guns out of this country, thank God. There is a way where they could make legal ownership. There is absolutely a way where owning a gun could be illegal. Absolutely a way. Now the question becomes, let's just take the California case, because it's happening here. It's already happening. I am being retroactively criminalized. If they were saying from this point forward, I'd still be against it, but that would make a certain amount of sense. But no, I bought a legal weapon, and in June of 2018, possession of this thing will now be a felony if I don't register it. Do I want to have a registered assault rifle with the state of California? No, I don't particularly do. And I suspect that if I did, then somebody or another would be basically tracking my position and watching what I'm doing. I mean, from satellites. I mean, some lunatic fan from Media Matters or something. And if I go and get a Coke or something at a drive-in on the way home, now I'm a felon. And I lose the right to keep the firearms, forever. And then, so what do? So I get the ugly butt stock, I guess. That's what I do. And it may seem childish to you that the idea that, having to get this featureless rifle stuff is even a consideration. Of course, don't register the gun. I know it's what people are thinking, but that's not the point. The point is, there's a lot of weapons I could have bought out there. I like the AR-15 because the AR-15 looks and feels like it's a serious weapon, and I don't particularly want to be made a retroactive criminal under any circumstances. This is the gun I bought. It's the gun I want. I want to keep it that way. I like having a forward grip. That's got to go. I like having collapsible stock. That's got to go. I like having the pistol grip. That's got to go. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up featureless AR-15 and you'll see exactly what they're talking about. Because the idiots in California that are writing the laws are not gun owners, they're idiots, they're politicians. If they wanted to get rid of these weapons, and I say assault rifles, I know there's no such thing as an assault rifle, I know that, but that's what they're calling them. If they wanted to get rid of the weapons, they would simply say no more weapons that fire .226 or what is it, .762, whatever the AK fires. No, anything that fires those calibers is illegal now. That would be a serious ban. They undoubtedly would do what they're always doing, then they would simply rechamber the weapon, but they would just simply list, here are the things that you cannot have. But they're so stupid. These politicians, they're so stupid that they put together a law, and the second that law is on the books, the far smarter people who own and manufacture guns are right around it. And the perfect example is the bullet button. When I bought my AR-15, prior to that, in order to own an AR-15 in California, you could not have a replaceable magazine at all. And to reload the AR-15, for those of you familiar with the weapon, you had to pull the back pin out, you had to break the breech open, and then you had to put bullets in, and then you had to put the breech back, and then lock it, and then you could shoot again. And I just test fired a Bushmaster AR-15 that had been treated that way, with literally the magazine, the magazine opening at the bottom is welded shut, and I fired it, and you could just feel that thing going like this, just constantly, because you're cracking this thing open every 10 rounds. So somewhere in there, some bright person looked at the rule and said, what does it actually ban? And the first iteration of the rule said it cannot have maybe it cannot have one of these things, or maybe it can have two but not three. I forget how it worked, but basically what they basically said was, we have to have the magazine welded shut. You have to break open the rifle. Why? Well, because you cannot have a replaceable magazine. What's the definition of a replaceable magazine? Turned out the definition of a replaceable magazine is a magazine that could be changed without the use of a tool. That was the definition of a replaceable magazine, and replaceable magazines were banned under that language. Now, look, I'm hacking at this story. There are people knowing this story much better than I do, but this is the rough outline of it as I remember it. So, you cannot have a magazine that you can just drop out and replace. You have to use a tool. Basically, you have to break the gun apart and do it. Well, what the geniuses figured out, our geniuses, not those idiots, what our geniuses was, they said, okay, so the definition is you cannot have a magazine that you can just remove with just your fingers, right? Just using your hands. You have to have a tool of some kind. That's right. That's what we're banning. Okay. So they come out with the bullet button. And basically what the bullet button is on the rifle, where you would normally have a little lever that you push, and the lever drops the magazine out. In California, that lever is replaced by a little round steel, I don't know, what do you call it, little steel tube, and the magazine release button is inside that tube. And you can't hit that button with your fingers. You cannot drop that magazine with your hands. But if you have a ballpoint pen, you can stick it in there and drop that magazine. And if you happen to have an extra round of .226, if you have one extra bullet, the tip of that bullet is easily narrow enough to be able to insert it into that guard, basically, and just drop the magazine like that. And then, of course, as this idiot legislature found the true power of people who are patriots and inventive and businessmen and all the rest, then all of a sudden you find people are selling rings for AR-15 shooting. And it's an unusual ring. Looks like a regular ring, except it's got a little tiny little thing that long there, and by pressing it up against the side of the bullet button, you drop the magazine. So now you can reload practically as fast as you could before. Well, California sold a record number of AR-15s, and I bought one of them. And now they've decided that those people who legally bought guns, like me, they have to be either criminals or we have to know where they are, and we have to know where they are because we want to make them into criminals. It's all intimidation, by the way. I say .226, sorry, it's .223. I understand. I got a lot of things I have to juggle here, guys. Sorry about that, .223. So that's how it works here. So now they said no pistol grip, no collapsible stock, no forward grip, no sound suppression. So the manufacturers have made an AR-15. It's the exact same as anybody else's AR-15. In fact, by the way, now you can have a lever that detaches the magazine. Now you can just drop magazines back and forth. You can go crazy with it. You can have two magazines in the stock. So basically, what they've done is the expandable stock on the back of that has gone away. There's a solid stock, and instead of it coming down to where the pistol grip is, it's hard to describe really, but it basically means you can't grab it like this. You kind of have to cradle it. You get your trigger finger in there, and the front hand grip comes off, but you still have the same weapon, and now the weapon is easier to load. And I just, what do you say about this? Yeah, good point, Governor. Infringement is what it is. It's nothing but infringement. And that means it's unconstitutional, and that means it's illegal. And here we go again. Here we go again. It's like we started the show with. If you don't enforce the law or selectively enforce the law or don't use the protections of the law, we never should have stood for this. Never. But we did. So that's that.